CGTN headquarters in Beijing. This is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. On August the 24th, China and the Republic of Korea celebrated 30 years of their diplomatic relations. The links between the two nations actually go way back in history, even before the two republics were born. And they have endured similar trials. Where is this relationship headed now, especially under a new leadership in the ROK and amidst geopolitical tensions in the Asia-Pacific and elsewhere? To discuss all this, I'm joined today from Seoul, South Korea by Emanuel Yi Pastreich, president of the Asia Institute, that is a think tank based in Seoul. We also have Haesun Kim, chair of Suntrans Globe Asia. She's also based in Seoul, South Korea. We have in Beijing here with us Mr. Rong Ying, vice president at China Institute of International Studies. Welcome to all of you to the Hub on CGTN. Let me start with you, Mr. Rong Ying. This relationship, China and the ROK, believe it or not, is only 30 years young, due in a large part to the Cold War and the division of the Korean Peninsula, where China was a strong partner of the DPRK and the ROK was a staunch ally of the United States. Beijing only recognized the ROC in 1992. Where do you think this relationship is right now?
Right. I think, as you rightly said, that even before the full establishment of diplomatic relations, the two nations, the two republics, has been enjoyed long-term relations, close ties. So some of the, I think, scholars or analysts will say that when 30 years ago China and ROK decided to establish full diplomatic relations, it's not established, right? Reconnect the relationship, because the relationship between China and ROK, or between the two Republics of Korea, the two nations, has going on long for 2,000 years. And of course, the 30 years ago, the decision was made.
That was a political decision, and the cultural and people-to-people ties, like you said, go way back in history.
Yes, right. And ever since then, we have seen economically, certainly I think in the cultural fact area, and also I think political field, that have been seeing trust and understanding has been steadily improved. Having said that, I think the past 30 years, in particular the last few years, have seen some problems, challenges. It is largely because of the changes taking place, I think, in the two countries and also on the peninsula and beyond. So as the two countries, the two nations are celebrating their relationship, 30th anniversary, the relationship becomes more mature. I think in the meantime, they are also facing a big issues, problems, and how to further nurture and promote the close relation. More importantly, and I think the common issue facing the two nations is how they should carry forward the original aspiration when the two countries decided to establish a relationship.
Yeah, original aspiration under these trying circumstances. We'll see where they will be. Ms. Kim, let me turn to you. Mr. Kim in South Korea, in Seoul. Where do you think this relationship is right now, given the multifaceted nature of China-ROK interactions?
Well, I have been building a relationship with China for a very long time. And there was a very good terms between Korea and China, and especially in terms of economic collaboration. Now, China stands as the #1 trading partner for Korea. So 1/4 of trading is made between Korea and China. But since 2016, when Korean government has decided to install the START deployment, the relationship, because of the political reason, relationship has become a little bit sensitive. And also recently, Korea has decided to participate at the Chip 4 alliance, and so this is also affecting the relationship between Korea and China. But there is a big demand and hope from the Korea side and the China side, I believe, in terms of business collaboration and relationship. So I think that the political, the policy from the government should not strongly affect the relationship, economic relationship between the two countries, because we have a big room for collaboration from both sides.
Yeah, Ms. Kim, how do you look at the fact that President Yoon of South Korea did not even meet Nancy Pelosi last month when the Speaker of the House of the U.S. was visiting? I think he picked up the phone, I had a quick call with her, and that was all. Why was that?
Well, I don't think Nancy Pelosi visited Korea officially, first of all. And one other reason is at the time, President Yoon was in a holiday period.
But he's still in
And
South
also-
Korea. He's still near Seoul, right? Somewhere near Seoul.
Yeah, somewhere near Seoul. So, but there's also some sensitive environment between Korea and Biden. President Biden visited Korea very recently, just after the inauguration of President Yoon, and Nancy Pelosi was invited to Korea by the National Assembly head. So it was not a very official visit to Korea, and so this is one of the reasons why
Right.
President Yoon did not meet her face to face. But I don't think there's any other reason.
Fair
apart
enough.
from that.
Fair enough. Emmanuel, what do you think? I mean, there had been a whole lot of interactions at the highest level between the two countries. The two presidents congratulated each other on the 30th anniversary. The South Korean foreign minister visited Qingdao, a port city in eastern China, and met with Wang Yi. How do you read these diplomatic moves and gestures?
I think there is a sophisticated effort on the part of the Republic of Korea under the new administration, President Yoon, to establish closer ties with China, that they are logical, rational, and that they show, I think, a considerable geopolitical sophistication, that President Yoon felt a need to affirm a close relationship with the United States, but then Foreign Minister Park Jin, as you mentioned, visited Qingdao to affirm the reality that China is the greatest trading partner. It has a long cultural and political ties with Korea, and that Korea's future is linked to China. That position, I think, makes sense to most people. And finally, there is great concern in Korea and around the world that the United States approach, especially you mentioned the visit of Speaker of the House Pelosi to Taiwan, that it was overly militaristic, right? Her visiting with a military escort, with a Navy escort, it was a little bit over the top for many politicians, not only in Korea, but around the world. So we really need to step back and commit, as an American, to a goal of peace in the region and a constructive, positive role for the United States on the Korean Peninsula and in the region.
Vice President Rong Ying, I want to ask you about this. Emmanuel talked about the fact that he thinks there is greater geopolitical sophistication demonstrated by the new president of the ROK, and then things are looking up. Do you agree?
Well, I think as a scholar, we are very much impressed by that sophistication. Not only I think in dealing with geopolitical issues, but more importantly, I think demonstrate the new administration, the administration Yoon's skills and acumen diplomatically. I think this is largely because ROK is able to make its own decisions independently based on its own interest. I think this kind of role is understood and appreciated. More importantly, on the question of Taiwan is an issue touched upon the political foundations of our relationship. And I think China has a deep understanding and sympathy with Korea, which I think also facing the same problem of national reunification. So any moves along this line in expressing understanding and pushing about the sensitivities to China will be greatly understood and appreciated.
Ms. Yi, Ms. Kim, public perception matters. We saw that across Western Europe and the United States, public perception towards China are getting increasingly negative. And South Korea is a staunch ally of the United States, of course, and as observer country most recently attending the NATO summit in Madrid, Spain. What is the public sentiment in South Korea towards China these days?
Yes, it's a very good question. And I'm a little bit concerned as a Chinese specialist doing business in Korea. Among the young people who are building some negative sentiment against China, many reasons behind that. But I think it's very important that between both countries, we need to do more of PR and cultural exchange, so that we can both countries can listen to the ordinary people's opinion and also watch some cultural drama or something like that, so that both countries can understand more about each other. And because of the COVID situation and pandemic era that we are experiencing, more and more people have limited access to visiting China, and also vice versa. So, the more and more there's a less flight going to China, and the less business activities, and also the trading areas are very limited to semiconductor area or some restricted area. So it's very important to have more activities and more exchange, not only between ordinary people, but between all the business people. So I think we need to give some alert to the politicians, so that they can ease any necessary regulations, so that more people can visit and meet together.
Well, I can tell you K-pop and Squid Games are hugely popular here in China, of course, among many other parts of the Asia-Pacific region. Emanuel, let me ask you about the geopolitics here. South Korea and the United States are engaging in one of the largest military exercises in the region these days. It's called Wuchi Freedom Shield exercises. What do you make of the timing?
Right. Well, the timing, I think, must be related to the recent visit to Taiwan by Nancy Pelosi. My guess is there was probably a proposal for South Korea to participate in military exercises with the United States and Japan, which South Korea probably refused for good reason, and has refused to come out with a condemnation of China across the board. And I think the response of Korea overall was smarter and more inspiring and more logical than that of Japan this time. And so I was impressed, actually. Some people said that President Yoon was cowardly for not meeting with Nancy Pelosi when she visited Korea. But I think people who are diplomatic experts would say the opposite, that it showed a certain degree of bravery for Korea to say that the relationship with the United States and the military relationship is critical, but that there are clear limits, and that Korea is aware of its own national interests and the importance of Asia. And finally, I think that the Koreans are making efforts, and I've seen this in Washington, D.C. and here in Seoul. Koreans are making efforts to convince Americans that America's long-term interests are in Asia and with a positive, constructive relationship with China. Obviously, there's no future for the United States if it pursues policies of war and aggression against China and Russia, especially at the same time. So the time has come for the United States to be logical, rational, and constructive.
Vice President Rong Ying, let me ask you, first of all, we've heard from Ms. Kim about the negative perception in South Korea towards China these days. And also externally, we have this pressure from Washington and the Biden administration to really hedge against China by forming alliances in the Asia-Pacific region, the Quad, the AUKUS, the IPEF. How much room do you think the South Korean government have when it comes to a strategic autonomy towards China?
Well, it certainly all depends on South Korea, that to how much extent they would be able to sort of manage the balance in a way that serve the best interest of itself. As I always want to say that the United States is a strategic ally, and China is also a strategic partner. So the point of balance, if I can say, is that South Korea would have to keep in mind its own national interests, and more importantly, I think South Korea would have to be more sort of confident in a way that South Korea is not a small country. After all, economically, I think it ranks the 11th. In GDP terms, and more importantly, I think it has been play a very important role in the global supply chain, particularly in semiconductor factors and manufacturing. And having said that, I can understand the debate going on, and understand that some of the concerns are right and wrong in vis-a-vis with China, as China, a big neighbor for South Korea, and as paradoxically, I think China and South Korea, the average people becoming closer, know each other. All of a sudden, that distance, that beauty because of distance disappeared. So it would take more exchanges. It would take more understandings and more efforts in people-to-people interaction to get to know each other. And that is unfortunate. That is unfortunate that because of the COVID-19, the disruptions caused by, I think, the cost, so that this effort has been sort of disrupted. But I think in the long run, as we have been discussed, we can do a lot, and certainly media have a big role to play, and people-to-people understandings, exchange of students, and conversations like that would also help the two peoples to have a better understanding. All in all, I think China and South Korea, and Korea as a whole, has been close neighbors for so many years, thousands of years, right? And we are not being able to separate. We have to live in the past, as it is in the past, and we are going to be neighbors in the future. So that is, I think, the reality. That is, I think, the way we need to work together to ensure the distance disappeared, but understanding will grow.
You know, there are certainly warm feelings between the Chinese and the South Koreans. Ms. Kim in South Korea, for example, talking about culture and sport, Song Heung-min, as you probably know, the soccer player for Tottenham Hotspur, playing in London, England. One of his largest fan bases is actually here, right here in China, myself included. Do you think South Korea is somehow able to compartmentalize its foreign policy? Being friends with the United States on one hand, and also being friends with China on the other.
Yes. We have we are celebrating 30-year anniversary between China and Korea at the moment, but you have to understand that President Yoon only started his term 3 months ago. So it's, he started, it's a new role for him to be a president, and he needs to bring some Chinese expert and, international expert who can help his administration, especially in building a friendship, renewing the friendship between Korea and China. And my suggestion is that because we are experiencing pandemic and we have to prepare for the next pandemic, and this medical and biosector is a very big growing sector. So my suggestion is, apart from the existing trading relationship between China and Korea, I would like to suggest that we should build more business in other sectors like biomedical sector. And there's a big demand from Korea side, especially some listed companies here who wants to have a deeper relationship and hoping for market expansion in China. So in order to expand those areas, it's very important to also form some kind of a joint fund between Korea and China so that both parties can invest in each countries and also build like joint venture businesses together to expand market. So those are the areas that we can expand business together. And also, as I mentioned before, the cultural exchange and the visit between students and ordinary people, we need to expand more of these areas in terms of earmarking the 30-year anniversary between the two countries.
Exactly.
And the politicians should work very hard on those
Cultural
points.
exchanges are so important. Having students studying in each other's countries, studying each other's languages and culture. Emanuel, let's talk about trade. Ms. Kim touched upon this very important issue. I have some figures to share with you. 9%, that is the year-on-year growth rate for the first 7 months of 2022 in terms of bilateral trade. And 8, that is the number of tariff cuts the two countries have had since their free trade agreement in 2015. What are the areas that you think have the greatest potential for future growth?
Between South Korea and China, there are a broad range. I mean, China really is expanding in every aspect of science and technology and economics globally. So there really are no limits. I think the ultimate issue in terms of trade and economic exchange, investment, will be equivalency with the United States, and that will be difficult. That Chinese will expect to be treated in Korea and the Korean market and by the Korean government on equivalent to the way the United States is treated. That the United States does not have some special favored status, and I think that's an appropriate expectation, that we should have a level playing field for everybody. Also, I think it's really important to get back to citizens, that we need more interaction between citizens, more small businesses have opportunities for economic exchange and trade between China and South Korea, and that sort of grassroots exchanges, economic, cultural, sports, and others, really will be the foundations for a healthy, long-term, cooperative environment between China and South Korea. And I hope will certainly include, in a positive sense, the United States, Japan, and other players in the region.
Yeah, that is the hope of many. Vice President Rong Ying, let's talk about foreign direct investment. South Korea's foreign direct investment to China surged over 44% from January to July. That is the fastest growth rate any country has ever had. this year so far with China. What do you attribute that to?
Well, certainly it's largely because of the potentiality and attractiveness of Chinese market, as now is also undergoing a dramatic transition. This now becomes, I think, the one of the largest consumers market, given great potential. And it is, I believe, it is partly because of some of the Western countries, for geopolitical reasons, they just want to decouple and leaving unfounded concerns from the Chinese market, that which gives the opportunity for Korean investors. Having said that, I would say that if you look at the trade and investment in the past 30 years, we have registered over 70 times growth from sort of 6 billion to now it's 360 billion US dollars. Total, that number is the total number of the trade of ROK with the United States, with Japan, and with EU. So this is incredible. And of course, I think as we are expecting that the volume will be growing in the future, I think efforts should be made to improve the structure and also I think the two sides should work together to facilitate the trade, bilateral trade and investment in a way that it becomes more mutually beneficial. That's why it's important that the two governments decided to launch a negotiation for the FTA, the second sort of upgraded version of FTA. And also there are other areas where China and ROK can work together to work, for example, jointly explore the third market and other regional and global issues in terms of development. China has many initiatives, ROK also too, and so we can work together to help to play a role in helping the world as a whole to achieve global development, sustainable. That would also give, I think, a global significance to our bilateral relationship, global significance to our practical cooperations.
Right. Ms. Yi, talking about investments and trade, how do Korean investors look at China and China's market? China has been making efforts to open up its markets, for example, the passage of the foreign investment law, among other things. Where do you think investments can increase? What are the investors' primary concerns?
Yes, compared to the FDI by Korean business entity to China, the volume of the investment side from China side to Korea is relatively very small. So in the past 20 years, if Korea has made a big investment, especially in terms of the building large-scale manufacturing base, such as Samsung Electronics, SK, or large LG, those areas, those big companies, I think it's time for Chinese companies and Chinese investment entities to invest into Korean businesses in high-tech area. As I mentioned, the biomedical sector is one of the big growing sector.
The biomedical sector, indeed. Ms. Kim, yes. That's all the time we have. So sorry to cut you. We look forward to having you back next time. And Vice President Rong Ying, Emanuel, thank you both so very much. That will do it for this edition of The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Bye and take care.